For years, many XRP supporters have pointed to one feature they believe will eventually send the price skyrocketing: the burn rate. Every transaction on the XRP ledger destroys a tiny amount of XRP forever. The theory is simple. If XRP keeps getting burned, the supply keeps shrinking. And eventually that shrinking supply pushes the price higher. But when you actually look at the real numbers, that theory starts to fall apart, because the burn rate on XRP is incredibly slow. So slow, in fact, after more than a decade of operation, the network hasn't even burned 1% of the supply. Not even close. Today we're going to break down exactly how XRP works, what Ripple is trying to build, and why the burn rate is probably the least important factor in XRP's future price. To understand XRP, you first have to understand Ripple. Ripple is not just a cryptocurrency project, it's a financial technology company. Their goal is to improve how money moves across borders. Right now, most international bank transfers use a system called SWIFT. And while SWIFT works, it has some major problems. Transfers can take days. Banks have to hold large reserves of foreign currencies. And the entire system relies on a chain of intermediaries. Ripple built technology designed to fix that. Their network allows banks to send money internationally in seconds instead of days. And this is where XRP comes in. XRP can act as a bridge currency. A bank can convert its currency into XRP, send that XRP across the ledger, and instantly convert it to another currency on the other side. The transaction can settle in just a few seconds. One thing that often confuses people is the difference between XRP and Ripple. Ripple is a company. XRP is a digital asset. Ripple uses XRP as part of its payment ecosystem, but XRP itself operates on an open blockchain called the XRP ledger. That ledger continues to function even without Ripple. So while the two are closely connected, they are not exactly the same thing. Another unique feature of XRP is its supply. Most cryptocurrencies create new coins through mining. Bitcoin does this. Ethereum used to do this, but XRP is different. All 100 billion XRP were created at the very beginning. No new XRP will ever be produced. Instead, the total supply slowly decreases over time, not through mining, but through something called the burn mechanism. Every transaction on the XRP ledger requires a tiny fee, but unlike many other blockchains, that fee is not paid to miners or validators. Instead, it's destroyed, burned permanently. The purpose of this mechanism is actually very simple: security. If someone tried to flood the network with millions of fake transactions, they would slowly destroy their own XRP. So the burn acts as a built-in protection system against spam attacks. But over time, some investors began focusing on a different implication. If XRP keeps getting burned, then eventually the supply must shrink. And if the supply shrinks, the price should rise, at least in theory. But when we look at the real numbers, a very different story emerges. The XRP ledger launched with a total supply of 100 billion XRP. Since then, every transaction has burned a tiny fraction of XRP, but the amount burned per transaction is extremely small. So small that it takes a long time to accumulate. For example, on January 10, 2024, the total amount of XRP burned since launch finally crossed 12 million tokens. Nearly a year later, on November 7, 2024, it crossed 13 million. Then on June 20th, 2025, it crossed 14 million burned. And since then, the burn has barely moved. As of March 2026, only about 304,000 additional XRP have been burned. That means the total burn supply is just over 14.3 million. Now remember, the total supply started at 100 billion. So after more than a decade of transactions, the XRP ledger has burned only about 0.014% of the total supply. Not 1%, not half a percent, just 0.014%. The reason for this is actually intentional. The XRP network was designed to be extremely cheap to use. Typical transaction fees are fractions of a penny. That's critical if you want banks and payment providers to use the system. If the fees were high enough to burn XRP quickly, the network would become expensive, which would defeat the entire purpose of fast, cheap global payments. So the burn rate is functioning exactly as designed. It protects the network, but it does not significantly reduce supply. Some people assume XRP burns work the same way as other cryptocurrencies, but they really don't. Ethereum burns fees through a system called EIP 1559. That burn can destroy large amounts of ETH during heavy network activity. Binance Coin has scheduled burns that remove millions of tokens at once. But XRP burns tiny fractions of coins per transaction. There are no massive supply reduction events. No scheduled burns, just a slow trickle over time, which means it will likely take many decades before the burn becomes a meaningful percentage of supply. So if the burn rate isn't the driver of XRP's value, what is? Adoption, liquidity, and institutional use. Ripple has spent years building partnerships with banks, payment providers, and financial institutions around the world. Their goal is to make global payments faster and cheaper. If that network grows, demand for XRP could grow as well. Not because supply is shrinking, but because the asset becomes useful within the payment ecosystem. That's the real long-term thesis behind XRP. Utility, not burn mechanics. The XRP burn mechanism is real, but it was never designed to dramatically reduce supply. Its job is simple: protect the network from spam, and it does that very well. But if you're evaluating XRP as an investment, the burn rate probably shouldn't be part of your thesis. The real question is adoption. Will Ripple's technology become part of the global financial system? Because if it does, that's what will drive XRP's value, not the burn rate. Thanks for watching, and we'd love for you to subscribe to our channel for more videos about a variety of subjects we think you'll enjoy. Popular businesses that were once on top of the world and now gone, reaction videos, state rankings, and much, much more. Thanks, and God bless.